welcome everybody to a new edition of UFO Land Live. My name is Tim for UFO Land. I have two special co-hosts tonight. I have Tom Reed from Interstate TV, and I have Matt Moniz. Please welcome them to our channel. Tom, can you please introduce Cheryl Costa, please?
Yeah, sure. Actually, I've met Cheryl a few times. And
Your sound is too low.
oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I met Cheryl a few times in Pine Bush, New York, and she's someone that I've admired in a lot of ways. She's doing a lot of work right now regarding compiling a lot of information with respect to UFO incidents in certain counties and states and so on. And I think we're here to talk to her a little bit about that today.
Yes, she is the top expert in her field, along with her partner, Linda Miller Costa,
Yeah.
in regards to crunching UFO sightings data. And she has come out with two books, one from 2001 through 2015. I think it's called The White Book. Correct, Cheryl?
Yeah, well, that's the slang name for it. Yeah.
Okay.
UFO sightings desk reference, United States of America, 2001 to 2015. And then
Plus, she came out with the Pink Book
in 2021, same thing, desk reference, second edition, 2001 to 2020.
Yes. And
my warning to the people who hear that: there are no stories, there is no field investigations in this. You wouldn't believe the hate mail I got from people who thought, where's the field investigations? Where's the sighting stories? No, it's charts, graphs, tables, and numbers and analysis.
Right. It shows sightings, where they occurred, the frequency, what time. I think they have
hours.
the
Yeah, we had we just in the Pink Book we had hours of the day. Yeah.
Right, and you also had the shapes.
Yeah.
Correct.
Yeah, that was the focus of the Pink Book, was to show that we had actually analyzed each shape and where they were and that type of thing. And the fact that people who used to say to us all the time, and they say this at the UFO community, especially the snarky people in the newspaper last week or so with the congressional hearings, they were saying, "Oh, this stuff's all white noise." Those 400 the military's got, those are the real ones, right? And but we analyzed every single shape for volume, what months they were, what their seasons were, what hours of the day they present themselves, and we have a pattern on all 29 visible shapes, and that's a lot, So that was our stock and trade for that Pink Book.
Tom?
Yes.
You got a question?
No, not right now. Wait, no, I'm just listening to what she was talking about. No, if as far as when we get going with this, I'm really interested in how far she's gotten with these books and what stage she still has to do and what years we've got and what, as far as what states and times have the most activity. I know we covered a little bit of that in the pre-chat the other day, but I find that really interesting how certain states have a lot of activity at certain times while other ones don't. And my thinking is, and what I was thinking about since Thursday, is that the sightings that have a certain sighting like time frame, like Cheryl, like maybe like hypothetically 5 or 6 o'clock, does that translate to a surrounding state where their sightings are an hour or so before or after, so that there's a path you can follow with the collected documents?
You want to track the thing.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about, since Thursday.
We did try and do that because when we were retrofitting the database during 2020, during the lockdown, I had all the time in the world to work on it. And when we were retrofitting, there were a lot of people saying, "Hey, why don't you put latitude and longitude in there? You could track them." The problem is that when people say they saw something, translating it to somebody in another state, unless like MUFON's been able to do that in the past, but that's because everything was coming into one database. Okay.
Right.
We didn't find that was possible with the combined data.
But aren't you have counties though, correct?
Oh yeah. But even if you want, I don't have an easy way to I don't have algorithms that would allow me to start seeing county in state A being hooked up to county in state B, that type of thing. I don't have that kind of
Well, I've got a question.
track.
So let's hypothetically say you're looking at Tennessee. You could also look at maybe Kentucky and Alabama or Georgia.
Yeah, but people don't report the same thing. It's like you got a cop out here who got 20 witnesses and they all saw something different.
Right.
I've got a sighting from April 16th, 2008 in Indiana. Okay. They had 25 sightings that day. That state average is 3 a week. Okay. But you go in and look at them. The sighting shapes are all over the place. You see some similarity, circles, spheres, circle of lights, that kind of thing. But it's not like everybody saw a triangle or something like that. It's not like that. It's hard to put your finger on it and say they all saw the same thing, except the fact that the time frame, at least in Indiana, was all within an hour window, and it was across 3 counties, 3 or 4 counties, if I remember off the top of my head. And one county had 12 of them, and then the other one was like 3 and 5 that were associated with it. But the thing is, there was no way to track the thing. There really wasn't set up for tracking.
Okay. Was there a way to determine what is the most common shapes or shape that people are seeing?
Sure. I know exactly what the most common shape is.
What would that be?
A light in the sky.
Yeah, of course. Everybody sees the
That's
light
at the top of the list. That's at the top of the list.
Okay, I'm thinking structured craft rather than
Okay. Circle of lights is number 1. I wasn't expecting this one. Otherwise, I would have had the chart right here in front of me. Circle of lights is one. Is the top one. Lots of sightings of that circle of lights thing. Bear with me. I've got this funny book here called the Desk Reference. And let me pull up my book here, and I will pull it out for you. The one thing I did get was back last year when there was all this, all these Navy things getting revealed by Jeffrey Corbell and everything.
Right.
There we go. They put a piece out about the USS Omaha, okay, from something they did in 2019. It was infrared, and they had the sphere. So this journalist on the West Coast called me up. I'm a journalist, so he calls me up and says, "Hey, are spheres a thing?" And I said, "Yeah, they are." He says, "Are there a lot of them?" I said, "Yeah, 17,150 in the last 20 years." And the guy about fell off his chair. He was expecting another maybe 17, 18, 100 of them or something like that. And people have no scope on how big this stuff is. I've got it all summarized here. Just give me, again, I did not expect that question, so I didn't have the chart here for it. And everything here is literally not organized to help you on this program.
Well, I got another question. Do you find that there are certain shapes that are seen more in certain states, like, or even?
Oh, baby, yeah.
When
I started doing presentations this year, okay, the last 20 minutes of the presentation, I show them a map of the United States for every single shape. And not every state has all the shapes.
Wow.
Okay. And some of them you see the patterns going across the United States, across the southern states. Some of them you see them going across the northern states. Some of them it's all weighted to the west and southwest. That type of thing. It's pretty eye opening. In fact, what I wish we had done the other night during the pre-show, I should have shown you that run of slides because it blows people's socks off.
We'll take the triangle, right? The triangle, like the Phoenix Lights was a triangle, and so was the Hudson River Valley sightings was a triangle.
Yep, and the country's covered with them when I showed the chart, and we map it by zip codes, not by dots. I had some professor when I was working on the original White Book say, "Hey, why don't you, when you do your thing, put a little map on the page and put like a UFO every place where UFOs are?" And I said, it would cover up the page.
Right.
And he says, what do you mean? I mean, there can't be that many of them. He's thinking like there's, 25, 30, 40 of them, I says, fella, at that book, I had said, I had 125,000 of them, now I got 167,000 of them. So it's pretty wild. And of course, I've reached out to media organizations in the past week and offered them, I usually sent them a chart of the numbers for their state down to the bloody zip code. Okay.
Right.
Crickets. Nobody will touch it. Even the Fox channel here was doing an article the other day about UFOs. I sent them detailed information about Ohio, where I live now. Crickets.
What about Marco Rubio? Didn't you send him a packet?
Yeah, I did last summer.
Okay.
Yeah, it was last summer, and what we did was I got the idea that we were digging ourselves out of the COVID situation to a point where probably, and Rubio had gotten that bill passed with when the COVID bills,
okay.
So that they were probably going to have congressional hearings, that type of thing. And what I did was I put two pink books on the living room couch, and then I sat down and wrote a cover letter for Rubio, who was at that time in his role as the lead of the Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence for the Senate. And then I found a counterpart in the House for the House Permanent Committee on Security. And I wrote them a really terse letter, nothing rambling. It was a tight little 4-sentence executive summary and a short letter that said, if you want the big picture of this phenomena, we are the civilian experts on the statistics. Feel free to invite us. And then what we added to that was I did a dump of the state of Florida, which had 17,000 and change sightings, 2001 to 2020. And we plotted it right down to the zip code for them. And we just ranked the county and zip code, and then years and across this 2001 to 2020 across the page. And then the shapes. Had to rank the shapes for him, and we shipped it down to him. They both got a 5-pound box. So again, nobody called us up for the hearings. Andre Carson got a package from me last week that was that thick. It had the short cover letter, and I did a dump for Indiana, and I even plotted out on maps for him by zip code and the numbers for each of every county in Indiana. Nothing.
So quick question. Okay, so I'm going to jump in here again, but with respect to Florida, and because Florida is pretty much the horseshoe, basically it's surrounded for the most part, 3/4 is water. Do you find that in Florida, for instance, that the sightings were over, say, the Gulf or over the Atlantic, or would you say that they were also over, or as seen as much over land? Because
okay, let me give it to you. The proximities. Okay, there's issues driving sightings. Okay, we found out that there were 5 drivers, and we'll answer those questions in a minute. Those people popped up. Okay,
yeah.
There's 5 principal drivers, and there's 5 secondary influencers. Not every state has the secondary influencers, but every state has the 5 principal drivers: population, temperate weather, leisure time, hours of darkness, and observer access to broadband are the drivers.
Sure.
Okay. And I want a copy of the Indiana zip code information. The book is called UFOs in Indiana and Where to Find Them, and it'll be out in a couple of months. Okay. The prototype book is laying over there on the work table. Okay.
Cool.
We've got all the information generated. We just have to assemble it into a book. And what we've done is we built a standard book. The only thing that changes is 2 write-ups in the front and the tables and graphs in the back for each individual state, and it goes right down to the municipal level. And if we had to do that in the reference book, it would have been 1.5 feet thick, over 6,000 pages, and it can't publish and sell a thing like that, So, okay. Now the secondary influencers. proximity to large bodies of water. And then these next two were given to me by my colleague in New York State, Tom Conwell. And Tom figured out that using our data, he figured out also that proximity to toxic ecosystems, dead coal mines, strip mine towns, dead oil fields, dead gas fields, brown fields, have not just any polluted lake or river, but heavily polluted lakes and rivers, that type of thing. So proximity to toxic ecosystems, they're very interested in our waste area, and they keep telling experiencers, take care of your planet. Okay. And then the other one was proximity to geological fault lines. They're really, really interested in our geological faults and what's going on there. Because, if the caldera out there in Yellowstone were to go up, humanity would be in big trouble. Okay. High visibility media reports. That seems to be one of these deals where if there's a media report today in a particular state, if you watch the databases for about a week afterwards, you'll see an increased amount of sighting reports in the database, but it's not current. People find, I could have reported it to the National UFO Reporting Center. Maybe I should tell them about that one I had 2 years ago or last month or last week. So it's retro reporting is what it turns out to be. Okay, I analyzed that during the break between the first book and this one. And then there's a thing called the generational effect. Places like Los Angeles County and Maricopa County, Arizona, have this where Los Angeles County, they had the Battle of LA. Grandpa told us about the Battle of LA. Wow, maybe if we look up, we'll see something. Okay, and then in Phoenix, Arizona, Maricopa County, Mom and Dad saw this thing back in 97. Maybe if we look up, we'll see something. So that's what it seems to be. So those are the drivers and influencers. And then there's this other thing we've discovered recently, and we suspected was in there, that there are these what we call hot spike days. A spike of UFO sightings in I'm sorry, I got to take this question. Cheryl, tell Cheryl that Yosemite and similar sites with high amounts of electromagnetic, stone, and water have higher amounts of scientifically. I don't deal with missing people. I deal with objects in the sky. Sorry, I can't deal with that. What was I saying a minute ago? Help.
You were talking about how people would report generationally.
Okay, that was that. Okay, what we're in now is we're doing something called spike day hunting.
Right.
What it is in the 20 years of the data we have, there are 7,303 days. That counts all the leap years and everything like this. And I had suspected from things I saw in the data while I was working with it that there was a tiny, tiny, tiny percentage. We're talking half a percent. Okay, we're talking 0.5% or less. That does the and all we're seeing is just the banner there. Okay, so what it amounts to is that there are a certain number of days they have 4 or more sightings in one day. Now that some people say, well, aren't there a lot of sightings? The average day in any location, county, or zip code is nothing to maybe ones and twosies. So if you see something that is 4 or 12 for a zip code or for a county, that's a big deal. Okay. And what I'm doing right now is I'm mapping. I did 20 states today with a chart like you're seeing right now. There's Michigan. Those are the I forget how many. Now you don't count those numbers down. If you see like July 4th there 3 times, that counts as one day. Okay. It's just 4 different counties, but you'll see those are the days. It was only barely a dozen days. And there sometimes when there's 2 on the same day, you count that as 2 separate events. But basically, that's what we're getting right there. And states like California, it was 4 or 5 pages long, the report. Most states, it's only just, like you said, about a quarter of a page, a half a page. I thought some of the smaller states like Minnesota wouldn't have any. Okay, but I sent you a little thing there earlier there, Tim.
Right.
Yeah, they did. They had like 5 or 6 of them, so it's hard to predict where they're going to be. And people think that a big state like Florida and Texas Florida's number 2, California's number 1, Florida's number 2, Texas is number 3. Now, I used to have people say to me all the time, well, Cheryl, it's all driven by population. No, it's not, because if that was true, Texas would have had more numbers. Okay, they have twice the population of Florida. But also Florida's got another thing going for it. They got 1,200 miles of coastline versus 400 miles of coastline for Texas. Okay. And of Texas's 256 counties, I only had about 25, 30 counties that had anything that was fitting this requirement of a 1-day spike or something like that. That was a high number. That number of 4 is statistically very high by itself. It doesn't sound like a lot, but it's very, very statistically high, and it gets bigger than that. It gets really statistically incredible. So that's the thing to keep in mind.
The one
I
thing
congratulate you on doing something scientific. One scientist that can appreciate that this is data, this is numbers. This isn't, subjective opinion about what somebody's saying.
It's not anecdotal. It's not anecdotal at all.
This is number driven. As a scientist, I deal with numbers every day, all day.
I got to qualify something. Okay. People see me most of the time. Okay. Linda's got the real science degrees. Okay. She's the real scientist of the two of us. And back when I was writing my newspaper column, 2013 to 2019, she would give me insights. Remember, writing a column every week is I got to turn in a 500 to 1,000 word term paper every Thursday. Okay. So, I'd be sitting there on Wednesdays saying, what am I going to write about this week? And she would say, well, you haven't looked at da-da-da-da. And I said, oh yeah. Okay. So I'd go do that, Now, the deal was when we decided, I had done a survey of New York State. New York State was my beat. Okay. So we had 62 counties, and I added up the counties. Nobody had ever done this before. National UFO Reporting Center doesn't collect county data. MUFON did, but it's dependent upon the observer making the report to fill it in. 3.5% of people didn't even fill in the city, let alone a county. Or they didn't get the right county in. So we supplemented the database with county information. And so the bottom line was, we looked at it and said, wow, here's New York State. We showed our data to some retired New York State former MUFON directors, former MUFON investigators. And I need to know what the publication he's asking about. So we showed it to them, and they're going, wow, we didn't know there was a cluster there. We didn't know there was a cluster there. My God, the Hudson Valley is supposed to be the hotbed for UFOs. It's Suffolk County, Long Island. Who knew? Erie is supposed to, Lake Erie is supposed to be the Lake Erie effect with all these sightings. But as it turns out, there's a Lake Ontario effect. But you had to look at the data differently. Okay. So the deal is, Linda had the science degrees, and she said, let's do something nobody else has ever done. Everybody reports stories. Everybody does all this field investigation. We're old ladies. We don't like ticks, barbed wire, cow patties, or marching around in the middle of the night in somebody's field. Okay. So we decided to fly a terminal and do the science in the library like Indiana Jones said. Okay. And so the bottom line was, she said, let's measure the phenomena. Not one, but the phenomena. So we decided to go with 21st century information, since everybody else seems to think that the golden age is back when. People, when the White Book came out, people said to us, why didn't you go back 40 years, Cheryl? Well, for this pink book, we did. Not for the whole book, just for the front introduction. We went back from 1960 to 2000. There's 40 years, both databases. There's an average of like 250 to 300 a year. It had the typical 7 to 8 year humpy thing, like a little snake going across the grass. But that 40-year period amounted to 13,156 sightings. Now, it sounds like a lot, right? We've got over 13,000 for 2012, 2013, and 2014. I'm sorry, 2011, 2012, 2013. Each year over 13,000. Okay. We're in the platinum age of UFOs, folks, not 40 years ago. You know, people report the wrong counties all the time. Yeah. Believe me, I do. That's why we put it, we physically installed it into the database. The other problem is people were yelling at us, "Oh, when are you going to take it down to the city level?"
Yeah.
3.5%. No, well, yeah, it is difficult. 3.5% didn't fill it in, and then another 7.5%, and that doesn't sound like much. But when you're dealing with 167,600 data records, that amounted to a lot. Think about that. 7% of that, we're talking 7,000 records. So the problems was, wait a minute, New Fork bases are a month behind. No, you're trying to correlate sighting. We weren't correlating sighting. We're statistics. We're doing statistics. We're always working in the past. So,
hey, Cheryl, in
go
regards to that publication that gentleman was asking about, was your book, and it is available on Amazon.
Yes,
both books are. So
yeah, if you go up to books, if you go onto Amazon, go to the book search, put in Costa, Costa, and then space UFO. You'll see both those books. The book, The UFO Beat, is a collection of all the articles I wrote for the Syracuse New Times. Okay, over 7 years, 238 articles, and then the Pink Book is the latest, most up to date book of the data books. Okay, that's the one I recommend because we've really understood the game by the time we got to the Pink Book. We had already had 3-4 years to look at the data, think about the data, talk about the data, argue about the data, but we got there. So Lindo has the science degrees. I've got the top hat and the cane arts and entertainment degrees. So I get to go out and do all the talks. Cheryl Costa might be an alien. Somebody's telling. Okay. Yeah. No, I got the same little things in my hand that turn off the terminals at the store. So we correlate sightings now. Yeah, that's good. I don't correlate sightings. I plot statistics and try to analyze it from a big picture. Instead of looking at one UFO sighting, we decided one UFO, like examining one ant, we decided to examine the anthill.
Question: what was your criteria for sighting? Are we talking CE1, CE2?
Whatever somebody reported.
That include abductions?
There were none in the database.
But they occur.
They occur, but if they weren't in the MUFON or New Fork database, there was no way for us to look at it. Okay. We dumped the stories. First thing we screen out of the data when we downloaded them, we took out the narrative. We kept what, when, where, what shape, date, state, and time. That's it. That's all we kept. See, a lot of people kept coming to us after the first book came out and said, "Oh, we want your database." They kept thinking there would be something in there they didn't know about. And I says, "It's all out there already. We're just crunching the data. We don't have stories."
So it's basically just bullet form. This is when it happened, time, county, what have you.
Yeah. Now, what we did do is we wrote some algorithms to work with the data into the database. That's why I just can't dump the database and give it to somebody. One, I really don't own the database. We graciously got the stuff from MUFON and New Fork. And the other aspect was, as my lawyer will tell you, I've got so many algorithms that we designed to help us manipulate the data. It's uniquely ours now because of all the stuff we've augmented. We've added zip code, we've added longitude, we've added FIPS codes. We've done a whole bunch of stuff in there. It doesn't look like the original data, except for the raw information that is marked by either New Fork or MUFON in the database.
So regarding the raw information, and to Matthew's point, those that were classified as a CE1, CE2, CE3, was there any type of a break?
I didn't see those classifications. That wasn't in the data.
None of it. Okay.
Okay.
No,
So
they
it's
don't.
just the report of the time, the place, the location.
And if you were in a CMS system with, in fact, with MUFON, I simply told them I wanted state, city and state, county if they had it, and it turned out to be useless. But city and state, the time of the sighting, the shape. That was about all we really needed. That's all they could really give us. It was anything we could analyze. There was no classifications by C1, C2, whatever. There was nothing like that at all. Although I was on a program last week with some MUFON investigators, and they did tell me deeper in at the investigator level, there's a little bit of demographic information, and people have been asking me for that. I don't have it. I would have loved to have it, but it was dependent upon the people making the report, and if they didn't fill in their city, they certainly didn't fill in their demographic information. There's a lot of people that seem to think you're filling out this report, they think the government's looking right back at you, in the computer. Maybe they are, maybe they're not.
Did anything stand out to you that with regard to the states that have the least amount of activity? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Washington, D.C. is number 51 in the ranking.
Wow.
Rock bottom. 209 sightings in 20 years. And that told us something. We lived in D.C. We both had 30-year careers down there. Linda's was 40 years down there. Okay. We both had careers that told us something. And it put us on the road to finding out that the sightings happened between about 5 o'clock at night to about 11 o'clock at night, with the peak between 8 and about 10. That's 60 to 70% of the sightings in the daytime are in that window of time. And that said, suburb, bedroom community, unincorporated communities further out, rural townships and villages and things. And we've since we put zip code with everything since then, we've been able to absolutely confirm that. In fact, the books we do for the states, there's going to be a thing in there where we can actually show you what it looks like in your state by hour. And well, you may see a whole bunch of sightings with a major city. Well, let's say take a county. You got this county, and here's the major city and the county seat in the county, and then there's these other zip codes in the county. And if you look at the spread of the sightings spread out over the 24 hours of the day, the major county seat has all the sighting stuff, right? But if you start looking out at these other zip codes that are away from the county seat, almost no sightings during the daytime, but they all congregate after about 5 o'clock at night up to about midnight. Bedtime, dog walking, going out for a smoke, walking the dog, having that last drink out on the deck, coming home from bridge, bowling, the Masons, the VFW, whatever. It's evening time, leisure time activity after dark.
Sure.
Same thing happens. I do a lot of ghost hunting, and a lot of the same things people report when they're home. Ghost activity happens around the clock. Oh, it happened at 3 o'clock in the night. Well, you're home sleeping at 3 o'clock in the night. What about 2 o'clock in the afternoon when you're at work? And the other stuff that goes on.
They can be taking the house apart where you're at work. So.
But the point being is, in order to see something.
To your question, though, about the lowest number of sightings. Okay, if you take DC off we report it. Wow. And of course, all the knuckleheads, when we reported all 51 locations, we use the term state. Oh, there's only 50 states. Duh.
Sure, right.
Yeah, DC counted in there. But North Dakota's rock bottom, 335 for the 20-year period, followed by South Dakota. And most of South Dakota's, again, you don't see it by the county, but you do see it when you put the zip codes to it. They congregate kind of funny, but
because I was kind of contributing maybe this, the restricted airspace that Washington D.C. has. Maybe that's why there were less sightings, because maybe some of them get confused.
Have you been there during the evening?
I'm sorry.
Have you been to D.C. in the evening?
Yeah.
All the monuments are lit up. It's got worse light pollution than Los Angeles does.
Right. So
you can't see anything. You can't even. I can't even on a clear night. I can barely see Sirius.
Okay.
Okay.
Hey, Cheryl.
Yes.
California's number one, and that's a polluted state.
But you can get in a car and drive up into the mountains.
True.
And you can see, and that's where the sightings are in the bedroom communities up in the mountains. Okay.
Not along the coast as much.
No, not as much.
Hey,
Go ahead.
Cheryl, can you elaborate on why the data suggests that sightings spike in temperate climates?
Yeah. Okay. Give me 1 second to pull a couple 3x5 cards out here real quick. Okay.
Okay.
If you're in a northern state, there's a baseline, and the baseline goes up and then it peaks. And then if you move down to a temperate state, the baseline comes up and the peak is smaller. And then I'm going to put a card up here momentarily. And if you get in the deep south states in the summertime, it dips a little bit. And this is what it looks like. Okay, that's a northern state. That's a middle state, like Virginia, going all the way across the country. It's warmer during there, and of course, they get a peak in the summertime. And then when you get in the deep south states, what happens is it's so bloody hot down there. Like this is Georgia, Texas, Florida. It's so hot, you're a prisoner of air conditioning. And again, you have to be able to be outside to see them. Okay. Now, there was only one paradox to this. There was one state that looked just like, actually, it was actually more like, give me one more. I'll give you the picture here. You'll love this. It goes like this. Okay. That was Alaska. The sightings went in the toilet from about May through about August. White nights. I've worked in those higher latitudes where it's light all day long. Mm-hmm. Okay. Again, that was another thing that was driving us back to this idea that hours of the day and darkness had an impact, and this confirmed it the other way in a negative sense. Okay. Yeah. And I sent. Pardon me.
Inverse.
It was the inverse, yeah. And like I said, this has taken 5 years to realize because we didn't know some of this stuff until the first book came out, and then people started writing us, and we started getting into conversations with people about different things. But northern states tend to have that little peak thing in the summertime, usually July and August through the roof.
Yeah, I'm in Massachusetts. I'm actually out in Cape Cod, so. Again, big peninsula with all kinds of water around it, a SAC air base. Now, that's another thing I've noticed from my research. A lot of activity also happens in military base areas. The base that we have out here is, as well, has some.
What are you basing that on? My data doesn't say if you are at a active, real base. Remember, after the Cold War in 92, most bases got decommissioned back, either got completely shut down or traded back into like Army National Guard, Air National Guard, Reserve Air Force Base, that type of thing. And so people who did that study, that lady who did that study back in the 70s with New Fork data, it isn't... they don't congregate around all those bases anymore. Okay. But 3 conversations with Lou Alessandro, they tend to follow the advanced technology, AKA very advanced electronics and very advanced nuclear weapons. So the active bases who might have nuclear capability, they are interested in it. ET's been telling us since the 50s, get rid of your nukes.
Well, the base that I'm outside of, I grew up right outside the base, was a SAC nuclear base. Still has nukes on site. And it is also the training ground for where they do unmanned drone training, as well as we have something here called PAPAWS, which is over the horizon, high-tech satellite radars.
I did not do correlations on this for 2 reasons. One, I was able to get a good list of it. But think about this. After 9/11, was I going to sit here and Google every one of those addresses?
No.
I'm sorry. I'm under enough surveillance as it is. Okay, with the stuff I do.
Yeah.
Okay.
I kind of know where Matthew's going to, though. I mean, in Massachusetts, correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, but there's like Nike missile sites there. There's
what? They're not there anymore.
They were there, but not anymore.
But not now. Remember, we're measuring 21st century. Massachusetts ranks. I'll tell you right now where it is.
Probably midpoint.
Yeah, actually it is. They ranked number 19, 3,040 reported over 20 years. Okay.
Yeah.
In fact, they had some of those spike days. I did their map this afternoon, so they have a small amount of them. There was something else along with this whole thing with bases. People say, "Well, are they hovering around our nuclear reactors?" There's 55. Well, yes and no. There's 55 active nuclear power plants in the country. I got it right from one of the lobby groups, and I got their addresses right down to the zip code and their street address, and we tracked it back against the base, and there was no indication they're loitering around them. I got more loitering around Disneyland than I've got around them.
That's really interesting. That really is, quite telling.
Because you're focusing around people rather than rather than nuclear power. I mean, they're concerned about our weaponry, I think, but I don't think they're concerned about nuclear stations because it's just power.
There was a lot of evidence that they loitered around the Indian Point one up in the Hudson, but that I was formerly trained in Navy nuclear power, and that was a Lee plant. Okay, but I don't know that. I'm not supposed to talk about that.
Right. I was actually trained in nuclear power too.
Didn't you know where I'm coming from?
I worked on multiple launch rocket systems, so that could be both nuclear and conventionally tipped. So I understand. But what I'm saying is
the nuclear power program for the power, the people driving ships. Okay.
Right.
One of the prototypes was one was in Idaho, and the other one was in Windsor Locks, Connecticut.
Yeah, right.
And if I were to look at the data for Windsor Locks back in the 70s and 80s, when the prototype was still there, prototype training site was still there. Yeah, there was maybe a few more sightings there, but nothing that would suggest a spike.
Yeah, that was there.
And that prototype's gone. They've torn that building down. Everything's gone. Yeah. So. Las Vegas is active. Yeah, it's the number one location in Nevada. Clark County. Yeah, absolutely. They like Disney fireworks. Hey, that brings up fireworks. There's a lot of states, not every one of them, but there's a lot of states that if you were to take all their sightings for a year,
4th of July, right,
and put it in there on a daily basis and do a bar graph for a daily basis, these things that looks like a static screen, right? And 4th of July many times goes through the roof. Okay, now. For a long time, I used to think that was aired reporting. People were reporting fireworks and like this. But Linda and I used to like going to baseball games. And we were at our local farm teams thing, and it was a doubleheader, and they had 4th of July fireworks after that. Okay. So there's the traffic jam from hell going on outside after the game and the fireworks. So we just basically sat there with our sodas and beers and just sat there and let the place clear out. And at this point, there's no fireworks. There's nothing like this. And Linda looks up and says, there's 2 fireballs up there. So we looked up there, and there were 2 fireballs up there. After a couple of minutes of us watching, gone, So, yeah, they do like to watch our fireworks, apparently. And I've heard this from other investigators.
Yeah, they were seen around the Olympics main pavilion a couple of times at night when they blew off the fireworks display. It was actually on the news, so they were seen. Yes, so I can correlate that. A
number of the species are extremely artistically oriented, and they get a kick. I believe they get a kick out of watching it. It's so artsy and stuff.
That's cool. What I wanted to ask is, does your data indicate anything? Well, let's take a step back so I can re-say what I wanted to say. What did you really think about the UAP hearing? Let's go into what you were
I
talking
was
about during our
not.
pre-show
I
chat.
was not. No. Are they done?
No,
Was that it, or is it going to be ongoing?
it's supposed to be ongoing.
Okay, now. Okay, Senator Carson received a very large package from me last week, and I said, "You should look at the bigger picture. It's not just all the military. When you're done, and I politely said, when you're done talking to the spooks and you're done talking to the pilots, would you like to talk to somebody who's been really doing the science on this stuff? You know, and we'll see. We'll see. I'm not holding my breath, but." See, I heard about the idea of congressional hearings back in 2019. Our DC lobbyist people, I called them the usual suspects. And I got called up and said, if Rubio, we didn't know about COVID at this point. Okay. Remember, this is about middle of 2019 rather. And they said, if Rubio gets this bill attached to like a military spending bill or something like this, they might be, there's a good chance there'll be congressional hearings. I said, okay, that's good. And he said, you and Linda wrote the only book of statistics. Even Blue Book didn't do the stuff you've done. And I said, yeah.
Right.
Would you be willing to testify before Congress? And Linda and I had to look at it and say, we were both government contractors for our careers. You do your best never to have to testify before Congress.
Yeah.
So we said, okay, fine. If they want us, we will come. We've got the data, and it's just going to be another speaking gig, so to speak. And then we got thinking about it. As women researchers, we catch the short end of the stick a great deal. And as two gay women researchers, we really get this bad end of the stick frequently. You wouldn't believe some of the hate mail I get. Okay. I know it's nuts, but you wouldn't believe the insults that I get, and you wouldn't believe the nasty pictures they send me.
Yeah,
okay.
Right.
It doesn't even apply. Okay. But okay. So we sat there and said, okay, if we're sitting before a committee and we're on C-SPAN, everybody sees these guys up there in this big panel and they're leafing through big, thick things. We wanted people to know it was our book. So we decided to make the cover bright fuchsia pink. You can flag it an aircraft with this thing. Okay. And we dedicated it to a woman, as Coral Lorenz, who founded APRO, predecessor to MUFON. Okay. So basically the idea was we wanted people to know this was done by women researchers. And, but like I said, if he calls, Rubio's people's had this, the the House Select Committee had a package from us. They know who we are. If they are going to take it seriously and just not say they're a bunch of those goofy UFO people, what can they know? If they take that tone that we're just a bunch of dunderheads, then we're lost, because some of the best research has been done. Now, granted, we got a lot of kooks, nuts, and crackpots in this community. We all know that. But on the other hand, are we being painted with the people always ask me, Cheryl, did you take the kooks, nuts, and crackpots out of the database? Honest to God, that was a question I got continuously when we were laying the books out. Hell, I had it asked me the other day with the prototype of the What and Where book over here, And I basically tell them, MUFON investigators will tell you 70% is noise. Dr. Valet will tell you 80%. We had a different criteria. We came up with 68%. So just to call it even, we said, okay, 70% was noise, 30% is good. So we started reporting what 30% of the numbers look like. And it still comes down to about 210 a month in the United States for every month for the last 240 months of the last 20 years. And there's always somebody that stands up at the presentation and say, well, it's got to be a lot rarer than that. I said, okay, let's throw 99% out and keep 1%. 1% of our data amounted to 1,676 for the 20 years. It worked out to 7. If those are the real off-world craft, it worked out to 7 off-world craft a month for the 200 and every month for 240 months of the last 20 years.
You Drake equationed it.
Yeah. In fact, if you bounce it back against some other things, it actually fits a lot tighter yet, And now we're doing this thing, like I said in the beginning of the program, we're going for the hot spots. And the hot spots are 0.5% to 1/4% of the total sightings. Okay. So we Drake equationed it, and that was the only way we can make it work. Now, what we were able to do, though, July of 2017, Fox Pictures did a poll to support the movie they did, that kind of horror movie they did set against the Phoenix Lights. Okay. And then Gallup poll did a poll in September of 2019. They asked the same questions, 36% believe, 43% say they're on the fence, and 70% say it's baloney. Okay. But they asked, both of these polls ask a different question that was never on previous ones. Have you seen a UFO? And the answers they got back from the polling suggested that 16, almost 17, I just called it 16. I defaulted on the low side. 16.74% of adult Americans say they've seen a UFO. Well, that didn't jive with the sighting data. So we crunched it, and it didn't look good with Fox. So we said, it's got to be wrong. And then when the Gallup poll, I went back and spent like 3 weeks playing with it, and then we came up with it. Okay, you just can't put the whole big number of 167,000 against that and get something that looks good. So I took every single state. I did a special spreadsheet where every single state with their 20-year total, and then I took their adult population, which is about 75% of the population of the state. I got this stuff from their state census, all that stuff, right? We put it in. So we ended up with a bell curve. Okay. At one end, some states were 1 in about 150, 175 people reported what they see. At the other end of the curve, 1 in about 475 people reported what they see. And the top of the bell curve was sitting up there about 225, 250, 275, somewhere around there. So we just say 1 in 254 people reports what they see.
Now, would you say the ones that didn't report it, the 1 in every 400 or so, were they Angelicos? Were they like the
where did you get that 1 in 400? Where'd you get that?
Like 1 in 400 reported it, or 1 in 250? What was that?
I said 1 in 250.
Okay,
that's the median. Okay.
Then the one that their calculations that were the one, I thought there was 1 in 400.
Oh yeah, there was a couple of states where it skewed out like that. Yeah.
So were they like more of the Angelica states? The more
Bible Belt.
Yeah, the more religious type states. The inlanders. Tennessee, Alabama, where they might not want to report that because of blood or something.
No.
This was more homogeneous across the country.
It was homogeneous. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, don't try to correlate to that. Please don't try and correlate to that demographic, because I've had too many people try to fit that kind of stuff around there and make judgment calls on the people.
Yeah, that makes sense.
People say, "Hey, have you tracked it against trailer parks?" No, come on, give me a break.
Okay.
I live in I live in Tennessee, and we get a lot of heat because of what we do and what we're into. And I know that lately, with everything coming out of the news, you'd be surprised at turnaround of people now coming out and feeling more comfortable to talk about.
Tennessee ranks number 20 in the country.
Is that right? Well,
yeah. They're only one down from Massachusetts.
Yeah.
So
he's originally from Mass, but
remember,
I've got Oak Ridge.
Here's what hurts the rural states: lack of rural broadband. Back when the first White Book came out, I was on a late night radio program, and we were on a commercial break. I had the White Book open up to the census pages, and I hadn't really looked at those pages. We were making the book so fast, I really didn't look at them. Right. And I noticed that all the states touching the Great Lakes themselves had many thousands of sightings, 3,000-4,000 sightings over that period of measurement time. Moved 2 states away, and it was in the low hundreds. And that got us thinking what's going on there. Turned out to be rural states. Later, as we developed understanding about this whole idea of rural access to rural broadband, things like this, places in my own state, in upstate New York, certain rural areas, while they had good sightings, there was a serious lack for rural broadband, and it was impacting those locations. Okay, poverty and lack of real broadband was a big driver. Not to have sightings.
Why would broadband be a big driver?
Well, if you can't communicate, how are you going to report it?
Easy access to report it.
Oh, yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Okay. I was
this lack
thinking
of rural broadband is impacting a lot of industry. It really is a lot more than people realize. Everything from mining to oil production, gas production, farming, all this kind of stuff. It's
well,
a big
data
deal.
is the new gold, right?
Right.
Data is the new gold. You know?
Yeah, well, that was the other thing with this whole thing, with what we were doing. Linda basically said, "Look, if Google does it, you know, and all Facebook and all these other people do it, let's use big data to measure the UFO phenomena." And that's what we did. And I said that to Carson in our letter. We said, we have measured the phenomena. We can't tell you where they're from, and I can't tell you how they power their things. You notice that all that talk with we don't understand their technology. You know, it's always about the technology. And where has that got us in 70 or 80 years?
Nowhere.
Nowhere. Because that's all. That's what. And I love MUFON, but by God, that's all they ever focus on. It's got to be technology, technology, technology. And I know an awful lot of state investigators. They have basically gun decked the data and said, "Oh, it's all junk." Okay, and there's some really, really sharp people out there, but there's some that just whitewash the whole thing. And I'm not that. Those people, I am not impressed with. And they
why do you think that they're whitewashing it? Why do you think they're keeping it under wraps? What's your opinion?
Oh, well, no. At one point they came to me. This is back with the previous director. He said, "Do you want the vetted data or the raw data?" I said, "For statistical purposes, I want the raw data."
That's science. Science 101.
That's science. But I had to specifically ask for the raw data. And of course, I had a lot of MUFON people look at me and say, "Oh, but you work with the raw data. That's not accurate." I said, "For my purposes, it is." you know. So Linda and I talked about this long and hard, and we decided we wanted the scientific thing. We want the real data. And of course, people keep coming to us and say, "Well, I got to make sure I do this right. Did you calculate this stuff by per capita?" And I always was puzzled by that. And I said, "Why is that so important to you?" I said, "It works." And again, Linda was the head librarian at the Environmental Protection Agency's toxicology library. And we both agreed this per capita works great if you're trying to do a disease model. But we were doing cluster studies, so raw data, the real numbers are what were appropriate. So when the Pink Book came out, there were people online, like Facebook groups, saying, "So wait a minute, how come Vermont and Maine are at the top of the list? They're supposed to be the top ground zeros, you know?" And I said, "They did a per capita study. They're almost at the bottom of the stack." I had one guy call me up on the phone. He says, "Hey, we want to go do a camping party someplace here in Maine and study where the UFOs are." I said, "You'll be waiting a long time." He said, "What do you mean?" I said, "They're lucky to have 10 a month." You know? If you want to go someplace where they have them like every day or something like that, go take a trip out to Phoenix, Arizona, you know, zip code 85001. It's ground zero for UFOs in the country. Okay. 85001. Downtown Phoenix is the ground zero for UFOs. Now, two top counties are Los Angeles County and Maricopa County, which is Phoenix. Okay. Los Angeles County, not the city, but the county, has more sighting reports than 38 individual states. Maricopa County, more than 36 individual states by itself. Okay. Although Phoenix isn't exactly the highest, but it depends on how you look at the data for what numbers you get. That skunk works. Come on. Stop worrying about what they're building. Honest to goodness. And I can't talk about skunk works. So never
I
was
don't
there.
think,
Never was there.
from what we understand, they haven't really been able to reverse engineer much. So we can't even get the documentation to prove whether they have or not. So
I
that's
think the IBM executive who said that, or I guess would have
Ben
been
Rich.
Yeah, I think he was pulling our leg, frankly.
Yeah, because he did say we have the tech to take ET home, and that they figured out the anti-gravitic equation, that they were off by a couple numbers or something like that. But, there's never been any evidence or documents to prove that. So you are correct.
If you talk to Mark D'Antonio, him and I had a really, really long conversation in that long 90-minute ride to the Ozark one in Eureka Springs from the airport. It's like a 90-minute ride. And there's some interesting stuff coming out of CERN right now about certain particles. And it suggested to him how the gravitic drive works. And we had a very deep conversation. We were literally picking up our bags inside the airport.
We interview Mark D'Antonio in 2 weeks. So, yeah, that's going to be...
You make sure, put it down on a piece of paper to ask him about this cool stuff that he talked to Cheryl Costa about, about the gravitons that they're measuring. And because he's of the belief himself that the UFO emits its own gravitons, which ended up being repelling. Okay, but we'd have to have our technology would have to have tremendous amounts of energy. So he said that would, and we talked about the energy side of it, and it'd probably be 100 years from now before we have that technology. The scale of energy that they need to do this. But talk to him. He's the physicist. I'm not a physicist.
So's Matt.
Well, yeah, man. Okay, I'm sorry, man.
Well, I'm an analytical chemist. I'm also majoring in molecular biology and genetic engineering.
Talked about that before. That's
what we were talking. I was talking to Caroline Corey about, because she was showing the thermal images that she got, and it was registering cold. So I'm immediately go, oh, endothermic reaction. So gravitons would be what would be bringing the energy in, so that would make it cold.
I thought something like that too, Especially when they were talking about the coal and going, oh my goodness,
It makes sense.
So, yeah.
I mean, it's only a theory, but it fits the physics.
Okay. Now let's go one step into the woo-woo for a minute. Remember, I spent a great.
We've not been out of it.
Oh no, that we're talking conventional stuff here, Woo-woo. I lived in a Buddhist monastery for 7 years in my 40s. Okay. And so I grew, to make this understand, I grew up in a clairvoyant family. Clairvoyance runs down my maternal side of the family. So as a 4-year-old kid, I watched my grandmother and her friends from the spiritualist church over there levitating tables and things, So I grew up around this stuff. Okay. And one of the goofy things about it was when I went into the monastery, it wasn't for more spiritual enlightenment. It was partially, but it was also partially to, I've been through 2 bad relationships. One was a 17-year marriage and a couple of things. I'd already been through a gender change. Okay. And there were other questions that were not getting answered, not by Western medicine for sure. And there was that. And then there was also the other aspect that I see the world very differently because of the clairvoyance. I see the world very differently than most people. Okay. And I'm aware of things that most people are not aware of. And one of our lamas made the comment. He says, you have the sight, don't you? And I said, yeah. And he says, more people would be able to see this stuff if they could open up the view of reality and make their view of reality a little bit more elastic. Okay. And that's when I got pushed into the higher metaphysics side of the training. because he realized, and the other comment that he made one day, he hooked me and another lady there, another novice nun. We were both Wiccan ladies, and he looked at us. He says, "Oh, you two have been touched by these Dakinis, sky dancers." He could tell. And he says, "So when?" And that got into a very deep private conversation. But the bottom line was, one side of the UFO community, part of it is also looking at the fact that some of this is not necessarily tin cans and technology as much as it's a metaphysical manifestation. Okay. And I am very firm, not all of it, but I'm very firmly in the camp that there is a high degree of metaphysical manifestation that is being reported as UFOs.
Consciousness, cosmic
consciousness. You bet. Consciousness is everything. The force is everything.
Yeah.
And as a witch, I teach my students, we are in the business of turning thought into form. Okay.
Thought projection. Yep.
Well, it's a little more complicated than that. But projection, yes, but it's nonverbal communication to the force, as they say. So great consciousness, mind, whatever you want to call it.
There have been reports that craft or objects appear and disappear as if they're materializing out of thought. It's like you think it, there they are.
Yeah.
Sometimes these people that are called summoners.
Yeah. I used, in my column, a number of times I wrote about some of these things. Of just the people I interviewed told me the thing just winked out, just it's there doing all this funny stuff, and then this gone, and that got me thinking about this. That's when I started really wising up to the consciousness side of this thing. And it's funny if you talk to Ray Hernandez, and you start talking about all the surveys with people going out of that were being touched, experiencers, that type of thing, all the people that they talk about in their data. Okay. And he explained it to me once at an Ozark conference. He says, I've got atheists that get touched by ET, they come back spiritual. I got Bible thumpers that get touched by ET and they come back spiritual. Okay. And then there's everybody in between. He says, it seems like ET is trying to turn us all into mystics. And I couldn't argue with him. It really, when you think about it, because, okay, here comes the Wicca 101 class. Reality is a construct. Okay. And because it's a construct that is thought-driven form, we have the ability to bend it, manipulate it, sometimes mangle it, but we have the ability to bend reality with our mind if we learn how to do this. And this is what I used to teach my students to do. I retired technically in December of 2020. And I wrote this really wonderful book called Magical Musings of a Rogue Witch, And I basically, when a Wicca priest, at least in the lineage I was in, when a Wicca priest retires, a priest or priestess retires, there's an expectation you would write a book about your life in the magical arts. And
your
everybody,
grimoire. You would publish your grimoire.
Well, yes and no. Some people publish a grimoire. Some people publish excuse the expression, the Betty Crocker Book of Spells. Yeah. Some people wrote management books, how to manage.
Like Llewellyn?
Well, yeah, gaggles, covens, and clans, and all this kind of stuff. And I decided to teach the magical mechanics and mystical physics, and I broke it down so simple. My adopted adult daughter. I never had any natural children myself. My adopted daughter, and a magical adept in her own right, trained with other people other than me. And his mom doesn't know anything. Moms are stupid. You know how that works. And so she trained. She looked at the thing and she says, "You can't publish this." I said, "Why? Is there something wrong with it?" She says, "No, you're handing out loaded shotguns to third graders."
Yeah. Good point.
Did I make it too easy? He says, yeah. So I put it on the shelf. This is about 10 years ago. And I put it on the shelf, came back 8 months later, took it in the backyard, put it on the grill, burned it. Okay. So when I did retire, I sat down and did this again. Okay, this time the response came back, my God, you're handing out, automatic weapons, And I said, okay, good. I got it down. That's simple. So the bottom line of the whole thing, and yeah, that's good. The bottom line was I made this thing so simple, anybody can understand it. Now, here's the hook. You have to learn to quiet your mind. You have to learn to meditate. And the average person prays to this little thing 80 times a day. 80 times a day, they bow their head to it. So I don't have to worry about people just picking up a thing and running out there and cranking out a spell, because you got to have a quiet mind to be one with the force, as they say.
Is there an app for that?
Yeah, you're right. There's no app for that. Although that Calm app that you can download is very nice for getting you in the zone a little bit, but it's not nearly quiet enough to do magical adept kind of workings kind of thing.
Well,
that takes a lot of work.
Nail right on the head. Everybody's so busy about wanting to be connected. We've been augmented. The real trick is people have not learned how to disconnect. And disconnecting can do far more healing for a soul and a mind than.
But remember, your life spark is a drop of water in the ocean. It's already connected to everything, everywhere, everywhen. So.
But pay attention to the drop that you are. Is the point?
Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
And the other reason I went in the monastery was to deal with my PTSD from my combat time in Vietnam.
Thank you for your service. And
yes,
welcome
thank you.
home. Welcome home.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And far too few of you never got that welcome. I've had plenty of friends and relatives that,
I was spit on in the airport
coming
home, called a baby killer. I was called a lot of things, yeah. I tried to hide from it for a long time, and
you shouldn't have been treated.
I only joined the VFW a few years ago, so. Now I'm the adjutant officer, the commanding officer of my VFW. So, we've made progress, I guess. But back to UFOs.
Yeah.
Yes.
What else would you like to know that I can tell you?
All right.
Yeah, I had a couple questions from before, but
I didn't expect 3 hosts. Believe me, I did not expect 3 hosts.
Right, so just to go back, we'll recap a little bit. You had mentioned that Windsor Locks, Connecticut had a spike, right? That was an area that had a lot of activity. And that just happens to be the home of KMD, or Command Aerospace, which is a government-funded manufacturing facilities that makes aircraft, mostly helicopters, which have the dual blades to pick up, heavy lumber and that kind of thing. Yeah. And then we mentioned, I think that was 19th, and you said Tennessee was 20th right after it. And I would be interested to know if the Tennessee's oceanfront, if you will, like Memphis, is more active than East Tennessee, because East Tennessee. East Tennessee has the nuclear power plant where Oak Ridge and Y-12 or Stanton Freeman.
Oh, is that where it was? Is that where it is?
Yeah. So
I've wondered that myself.
Yeah, you've got the nuclear power plant on one end, and you've got Memphis on the ocean side.
Okay, I need to say something, and I got to be very square with you about this.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think half the reason I don't find as many sighting reports around bases and around sites like Oak Ridge or the one in New Mexico.
Area 51?
No, that's Nevada. No, where they built the bomb.
Alamogordo.
Yeah. Okay. I wonder if, how do I say this? Since all the reporting goes through web, NSA's had their fingers into the web for a long time. And I've often wondered whether or not information being reported to MUFON or New Fork is being filtered before it ever gets there.
Well, that makes sense.
Okay, because I'm not finding the numbers that military claims. Of course, they have some very sophisticated sensors out there. If you listen to these guys during the congressional hearings, they've got some amazing technology. I heard one guy talking about some stuff, and I said, "Wow, that was a pipe dream when I was doing just basic radar." I go, "Wow, what a cool idea!" But I don't know what they're working with. I'd love to know, but from a curiosity standpoint, but the bottom line is people come to me. I had a couple scientists a couple years ago after the White Book came out saying, well, how is this possible? We can track a baseball sized thing out 250 miles in space. I said, yeah. I said, we currently have aircraft that should show up a really big splash on radar. As a former radar operator, should do that, but the reflection now is in the birds and the bees area. Very, very tiny reflection, if at all. I said, if we have this technology, don't you think they do? Or something better? I'll give you my case in point. The changing UFO. I heard Jacques Vallée talking with George Knapp one Sunday night. And he talked about the changing UFO being really, really weird from the standpoint. It's like his team would, hey, wow, they get the equipment up on it, and then it looked like something else.
Change shape, yeah, morph.
Or yeah. So I went back into the data, and I was looking at it, and the problem is you got all the different shapes on the graph, and the changing UFO was so tiny in numbers, I could barely tell it from the bottom line of the graph. It was so small. 75 to 123. No, I'm sorry, 75 to about 150 a year. The baseline was about 123 a year. Okay. Wow. But if anything was telling, that thing was like a regularly scheduled flight. It wasn't spotty here, there, and everywhere. It was like regular. Okay. And that rattled me.
Statistically, that's significant.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's highly significant.
And so I got to thinking about it one night. And again, I did it from a metaphysical side of it and started thinking about it. And I said, what if that particular class of ship is a living ship? It's got AI beyond anything we can imagine. And that AI has the ability to link into like a telepathic type thing. And when we see it, it knows we see it. And how many UFO reports have you read for somebody? It seemed to act like it knew it was looking at it, right?
Right, and exactly.
The changing ship does one better. It either gives you a holographic projection and makes it look like something else and it cloaks itself, or it just simply beams something into your head, because remember, we don't see with our eyeballs, we perceive with our eyeballs, we see with our brain. And if it tells you, you put something in our noggin and says, nope, it looks like this, these aren't the droids you want, and that's it. And I truly believe myself that the changing UFO is exactly that. It is telling us what not to see.
Or what to see, yeah.
Or what to see, yeah.
Right.
I think that's how sophisticated the cloaking technology. My DD-214, and this is as much as I'll say about it, my DD-214 says I got out of the Navy. It's a first-class petty officer, trained in submarines, and I was a senior electronic warfare tech. I understand an awful lot about sensors, okay? And so from my viewpoint, if we've got technology like this, they got to have something better.
Right, yeah. And they're saying the Pentagon, quote unquote, such as it is claiming that there is technology out there that far exceeds conventional wisdom and conventional physics that we operate with currently. So,
well, the story is our government's usually 30 years ahead of what we see out here on the market. Okay?
Right.
And if they're saying that means these guys are far beyond that, which we've always suspected that anyway. So what the heck, so.
Right. Let's go around the panel and take last comments. Tom?
By the way, salute to your fans. You guys are great. I've been seeing some of the things popping up here. So,
thank you.
Okay. Question.
No, I think we pretty much covered it. I think you're doing a terrific job with all this. I do have questions about, I guess what I hear a lot about is the activity around nuclear power plants and stuff. And you're very adamant about the fact that there is no increase, correct, around those.
The 55 active nuclear power plants. I ran not quite literally. I put their zip codes in, filtered on that, and I did not see a substantial, not at the local level, at the zip code level, or the county level. Nothing above the ordinary.
Yeah, isn't that crazy? Because we do, as well as anybody, we hear that a lot, and it just doesn't really. It's not really true then.
Now, if you want to go out to some place where they're disposing of nuclear waste, I bet if you tell me where it is, I got a funny feeling we're probably going to see a spike there, provided there's anybody around to report the UFOs.
Yucca Mountain?
Right.
Yucca Mountain?
Yeah, but are we really storing stuff there? I mean, I read several stories that said we built the thing and now we're not using it, So I don't know what to believe.
I don't know how many drums I've sent there. That's one of the jobs I had, is dealing with all the hazardous waste in all the labs I've worked in.
Oh, get me a zip code. Off air, get me a zip code or a longitude. I can do that real quick.
Yeah. Okay. And Oak Ridge, which is right down the road from me, where Stanton worked, a lot of the people working there, a lot of the scientists came from Area 51. So we've got a lot of people that worked at Area 51 now working at Oak Ridge and Y12.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, I can give you a zip code for that too, but I'm just curious. Being I live right near it,
That zip code automatically will translate to me to a county, all that kind of stuff. So I can look and see what the county clusters look like around it. And everything. So
believe it or not, there have been significant amount of sightings near Prairie Island nuclear power plant near me. It's only about 60, 80 miles from me on the Mississippi River. And there's it's right next to a major Native American tribal reservation. And I always wondered if it had
now I can talk to that. I can talk to that. We were talking about Dakotas being at the bottom of the thing. I had a reporter come to me about 8 months ago, and he was talking to me about about South Dakota. And he says, we don't have a lot of sightings here. And he says, yeah, but they're all over, according to the map that you sent me, they're all over Minnehaha. And I said, yeah, that's where it concentrates. That's an Indian reservation. Oh. So, they did a really nice story to it. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Now, that is something I would feel comfortable Googling, is the 400 or so Indian reservations in the country. But again, it's also a function of whether or not those people are going to be out doing things.
Right.
Do they have broadband there?
Right.
Some of these reservations are still living in the 1950s, from what I've seen.
Like archaic almost, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, very poor too.
Yeah.
Unless you're associated with a casino, then you've got a little.
Well, that's made a big difference. That's made a very big difference. So.
Right. And
Matt, by the way, Matt, do me a favor. If you're on Facebook, friend me, will you please?
I'm not really a social media guy.
Okay, fine. All
right. I
can. Do me a favor. Work through Tim and send me an email address.
Sure.
Yes. I've got his email, Cheryl. He wrote me a letter tonight. So if with Matt's permission, I'll send it to you. Is that okay, Matt?
By all
means. I'll send
one
it
scientist to another. I'd love to share some stuff.
I'll send it to you.
Well, I was going to say, don't I get to ask a question?
Yeah, it's your turn.
You do.
All right, my turn. I'm going to ask this. In your upcoming studies, I'm sure you're going to be doing more of this. What are the future points that you're going to look for? In other words, you've got all of these other points. What are you going to further basically cook it down into other specific salient things like what we've been talking about in terms of, nuclear waste sites, government sites, or are you just going to keep it straight mathematical, statistical?
No. The UFOs and Where to Find Them series.
Yep.
It's going to be all 50 states. I may combine North Dakota and South Dakota because it won't be the data combined. Neither one of them by themselves is activity near Sedona. Yeah, I don't want to hear about Sedona. They don't report what they see. So I don't want to hear about Sedona. If they start reporting what they see, I'll say, yeah, by the way, that's a hot spot. But they're not a hot spot because they're not reporting. If they don't report them, I can't count them. Okay. Otherwise, it's folklore. If people just say, oh, yes, Sedona's hot. People have been telling me the Hudson River was hot. Suffolk County, Long Island was ground zero in New York State. Okay. Not the Hudson Valley. Okay. That's what the data showed. And right now, I'm driven by data. I want to know the facts and not folklore and anecdotal stuff. Okay.
Right.
But, okay, the question was,
are you going to be able to put it in?
Yeah. Okay, we're taking it. Okay, what the request?
You know.
Yeah.
We're
Going down to every single state, down to the municipal level.
Okay.
So anybody future picks it, we wanted our books to be available from the context of future researchers. When we're done with this, it will be about 75, 80 books between the desk references, a couple of analysis books, and the, we're doing UFOs in a state and where to find them. And then we're doing 29 this UFO shape and where to find them, saucer UFOs and where to find them, triangle UFOs and where to find them. We're going to drill down the data right down to the local level with maps, all this cool stuff. Okay. Now, this other thing I was working on the last day or so was this idea of I want to do a book on nothing but the hot spots.
Okay.
This 0.5% or 1/4% of the data that was a one-day hotspot. See, people call me up all the time and say, Cheryl, where's the hotspot? And I say, are you talking a particular shape? Are you talking a particular location state-wise? Are you talking a particular season?
Right.
There's a lot of things.
Specific.
See, people have this perception. There's got to be a location out here near me where this thing shows up like a bus stop every day. No, I found no evidence to that, but we have found evidence to suggest that there's probably about 100, maybe 150 places in the country in the last 20 years where nothing ever happens at this location. It's mostly blanks and onesie-twosies if they have right sightings. But one particular day, boom, they had something. They had 4 or they had 18, which is like through the roof. Okay. And that's what we're mapping right now. I literally did 20 states this afternoon with classical music blasting in my ear and sitting here running the process. The process takes about 20 minutes to extract the information. So California took like an hour because it's bigger than every other state. But it was 5 pages of hotspots. But
go ahead, Matt.
I don't want to step on your toes.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
We're running low on time. So one of the things I want to know is how can people reach you if they want to, and how would they be able to help you with your statistics? Where should they report their stuff to?
Okay, they don't report it to MUFON or NUFORC. I would recommend they report it to the National UFO Reporting Center. Okay, don't expect a phone call from them. They might call you, they might not call you. But if you're expecting a MUFON representative to come out and see you, and their material is private because you got to be a member of their club to look at their database. Okay, NUFORC, at least you can go out online in 2 weeks from now after they've updated the database, and you can take a look at it. There's always about a 2-week to a 30-day lag on their updates. But that's an administrative thing at their end. So I recommend National UFO Representative, that would be newfork.org, and go there and report your sighting. Don't give me individual sightings. I don't use it. I get it from the databases. And by the way, I'm not getting any more from the databases because we stopped at the end of 2020. We're not doing any more. Okay.
Right.
All we're doing is analyzing the past 20 years worth of stuff and milking it for everything it's worth. So when we're done, we figure right now with everything we've got penciled in on the chalkboard, We will probably finish in about a year and a half if we still are alive. We'll have somewhere on the order of 75 or 80 books, and it will be the largest collection of analyzed and compiled UFO data ever published in human history. That's a good thing to go out on, isn't it?
Yes, very awesome.
As a scientist, I'll take Linda and I have an attitude. We'll take our PhDs now.
Yeah. And I think you should contact Andre Carson again, to be honest with you. Keep writing him. And if not him,
I don't want to become a that's the problem with the UFO community. We got too many goofy guys out there being a nuisance.
What about Tim Burchett?
I contacted my state senators in New York State, and my email address, when I just go and make a request into my congressman or senator for information about something to do with the veterans or something like that, and the address has been rejected, it's blocked at the federal level.
Wow. Okay.
Okay. So
it's not okay, but it
saw me as a nuisance because I was saying to them, will somebody talk to me from your office, please?
Right, exactly.
But they have written us off as nut jobs. It doesn't matter how professional we are. Of course, then I did get the one thing. So, you got a degree in this? And I said, nobody's got a degree in this. Oh, I'm sorry. Right. One guy's got a degree in it, Dr. Jacobs, but that's it. That's it. And I reached out to 16 State University of New York colleges, and the email went to with a briefing document, okay, and it went to at that school, physics department, earth sciences, psychology, not psychology, either psychology or sociology, one or the other, and it went to the philosophy department. Those 4 chairs got the letter at that school. All 16 schools, crickets. I can't give a free presentation like I do at one of our UFO conferences. I have been trying for 3 years to get one college to let me come and give them a free presentation that will blow their socks off. Oh no, we can't do that. Oh, we can't. I got to keep away from this. This is fringe stuff. We can't talk about that. Hey, Galileo was a kook and a crackpot in his day. Okay. And he made the comment, it still turns. And I'm going to say, hey, there's no such thing as UFOs. They're still there.
Right.
If you want it in the Latin, I'll give it to you in the Latin.
Well, we thank you very much for coming this evening, Cheryl. I really appreciate all your evidence and hard work, and look forward to seeing more of those 80 books. I really do. And in fact, I'll probably end up spending all my money buying them all. So I'm serious because I do collect the data.
I'll give you one more, though. Just before we moved down here to Cleveland, I was packing for 6 months. Linda came to me back last summer and said, I'm going to retire at the end of the year. I want to go home. I said, you are home? She says, no, I want to go home to Cleveland. She grew up here. And I had nothing holding me to upstate New York. I'm disowned and disinherited from my family, so that there was no reason for me to stay in New York. So I said, okay, fine, great, we'll do this. Back in November, State University of New York at Albany took my papers. Okay, that's a big deal. 25 crates of stuff. They sent a truck down to pick it up. I was an activist back in the day. You know the term transgender? I was one of the 6 people who coined it back in 85, 86 timeframe. Okay. So quite literally, the director of the archive says, you're going to be right up there with Susan B. Anthony, and somebody's going to get a master's or a PhD looking at your stuff 50 years from now. I said, fine. But my UFO stuff, they've been getting all of the original manuscripts and a copy of everything UFO that I'm doing. So they're going to have all my material, and we've put it in our will. They're going to get the master database when we're dead.
That's awesome.
So it's going to be preserved. It's not going to be rotting in somebody's garage or something. And so that's the plan. Okay. But like I said, we're going to produce a series. Oh, one thing we're going to do with the books on the covers, it's not going to be unlike the reference books, but it's going to have a snappier title. we're going to color each of the 4 major census districts a different color. Each census district will be a different color. Like the Northeast will be blue, and maybe the Florida and southern states is going to be like a yellow, and the Midwest like green and orange for like the
Right. So they're color coded.
They'll
Right.
be color
I
coded.
understand.
They'll be
Right.
color coded. Now, we're thinking about doing the shapes books. We're thinking about doing them in rainbow colors. So that's the gay thing here, talking, being snarky. But no, we're going to do an individual book on every single shape because there's too much to put in one book with all shapes. So we're going to do one to every shape. There's 33 shapes between the databases, but only 29 of them are a recognizable shape of some sort. Once we're George Galileo, I doubt it. Go ahead.
I was just thinking, what do you mean when she dies?
Yeah.
That's how you join them.
Yeah.
Well, we're not looking to that day. We're hoping that you will remain with us for quite some time, say 100 more.
Short of accident or something nefarious, my family lives. Our genes and family. I was told when I was a teenager I would live to be a centurion, short of an accident or something. Our family lives into their 90s, high 90s, and and my doctor knows that, and he says, if you just eat right, you'll probably make it. Yeah. So I'm going to be working at this stuff for at least another 2 years, and then Linda and I have other things we want to do, and we'd like to get out from underneath this. Except, we'll go and do talks and everything. But we don't think we got 20 years of data to analyze. We've learned some amazing stuff. Just the stuff I dumped this afternoon is going to be a book by itself when you think about it.
Well, Cheryl, I want to say this to you. You're more than welcome to come back on UFO Man anytime you'd like, so that we can get deeper into the subject. I think you have a wealth of information.
Well, as we start dumping out the state books and the shapes books, I should drop in and say, this is what we got here, and this is what we went after,
Right, you can do that. I just want to thank you very much for being here tonight.
Okay, my pleasure.
And I also want to thank you, Matt, and thanks to Tom Reed as well. And thanks to everybody who watched online and everybody who participated in the chat room. Very gracious of you to be so kind to Cheryl Costa. Thank you very much. Next week, we are interviewing Judge Kevin Titus, a friend of Tom's and Matt's. So feel free to come around and see him. And I think, Cheryl, do you know Judge Kevin Titus?
I've heard the name. I've heard the name.
Okay, he's the one who signed the documents into historical truth for Tom's.
That's what I thought. Yeah.
So he's going to be on next week. Wow. So and we expect to see Matt there as well. So I hope everybody can join us. And from all of us on the panel, we just want to say good night and good evening.
That's good night.